Hello, it's March 18th, and see where we go with this. I've been reading a lot on the situation in Europe, if you call it a situation. It really isn't. It's just good old fashioned, well, typical over there. At the end of the day, there's a lot of theories. There's people that can explain on what's going on a lot better than I can. I think there's a lot of information that's being misinterpreted or simply held back. There's propaganda on both sides at this point, and everybody's looking at each other, pointing fingers at each other, going, "Oh, we'll help beleaguered Ukraine, but we won't actually step in." There's a lot of people on the internet going on and on about NATO and how it operates without actually realizing how it operates. There are some guys that do understand, and for those, I have to say, well, good somebody did their homework. But I've listened to more than a few who don't know. Um, Not a professional video doing this early in the morning. Another thing that's crossed my desk, so to speak, is there's a lot of, I don't know if it's miscommunication or just a lack of homework being done when it comes to the geopolitical crisis on the news. Because Ukraine isn't completely innocent in all of this. Now, Russia did instigate. No one can deny that. No one can deny that Russia's been committing what would be equivalent to war crimes. They have a history of doing this, so this, again, shouldn't be anything new. It's in basically basic tactics 101 for them. It doesn't help that the Ukrainians have decided, and they've decided all on their own, to hold to the last. Now, this is heroic and it's fantastic and it's all this other good stuff. And next thing you know, there's going to be a Netflix special that Zelensky will end up becoming a black woman for. But at the end of the day, it does two very big things, and it creates two very big problems. One big thing is that as heroic and majestic and romantic as it all sounds, what it essentially means is that the people with the skill sets that have not left the country are probably going to die if they haven't died already. Why is this important? Well, this leads to number two big thing. Anything that is left for Russia to take over and puppet won't be worth keeping. Russia's overall benefits that it can get by puppeting Ukraine will be severely reduced by the fact that the insurgency that will follow, because you know damn well the Ukrainians aren't just going to let this all go, and the fact that there is no one competent to run their country, and I don't mean the politics, I mean the actual people, means that there will have to be an influx of workers and or experts from Russia or other states to basically assist Russia in rebuilding the country. And rebuilding it will have to do. Now, this might sound pro-Russian, but if you think about it, I'm not really saying what Russia's doing is a good thing, nor am I saying what Russia is doing is smart, because it's neither. At the end of the day, Russia's crimes are for everyone to see. You can see them on the 6 o'clock news, for fuck's sakes. It's not that big of a thing they can hide, despite how well their propaganda is going. They've nuked their own economy, relying more and more on China. Now, Russia and China weren't always friendly, and China's got its own issues at home. Never mind what they want to do with Taiwan. So you have two hostile powers getting together. And even though militaristically, they are probably not capable of continuing a war in Russia's case. In fact, Russia couldn't even start one properly. And in China's case, they're kind of logistically hamstrung. They're not out of the woods for what they want to accomplish, But the cost they will have to pay in order to accomplish the annexation of Taiwan, I ain't seeing that ending in just writing a check. It's going to be bloody. The difference is how many people are probably going to die. And this leads to another aspect of all of this that I noticed isn't really being reported on or talked about, and that is the fact that every country in NATO and elsewhere is shoveling all kinds of munitions, weapons, equipment into Ukraine on almost a daily basis. This sounds good until you actually pay attention to the logistical capacities of what the Ukrainian military and militia forces can actually do. Anti-tank weapons are only good in the hands of people who are facing tanks and, infantry fighting vehicles and such. They're not committing to suicide tactics, which is actually a good thing in this case, but that does not mean suicide tactics are not being implemented. Again, we don't know what's going on. Asymmetrical warfare will be key to success. It has been in the past, it will be in the future. Taliban didn't win because they were great on the conventional grounds. If you can say the Taliban really won, it's more like the United States gave up and the politicians didn't want to do what they needed to do. Russia is not making this mistake. The Russian politics, whether you agree with them or not, and frankly I think Putin's a bit of a maniacal narcissist, and should get the good old-fashioned oligarch treatment of a very big bullet coming from a very far-away place. But at the end of the day, he's still in charge. And until that changes, and until the position within Russia changes, the war in Ukraine will continue, whether people want it to or not. So then it comes down to what can be done. Well, like I said, the Ukrainian people are going to go out with a bang, period. Whether they get intervention or not. If I was the Belarusian president right now, I would actually be extremely nervous. And the reason why is because Russia could end up dragging Belarus into a war it simply can't fight. And I have a sneaking suspicion that a lot of Eastern European states that border Belarus, Poland, Estonia, no, I don't think Estonia does. Crap. I wish I had a map in front of me. But anyway, all them Baltic states that border around Belarus outnumber the Belarusian military. They would need Russian support from start to finish. And the Russians are getting ground down as it is. So if Russia decides to break the bat and poke NATO's nose and see what actually happens, they technically could, but at the end of the day, it really wouldn't accomplish a whole hell of a lot. In fact, it would make things even worse for Russia than they already are. Now, Ukraine falling isn't very good for Europe or the rest of the world either. And the reason why I think we should be continuing to support Zelensky, and the reason why I truly believe that some countries, especially those that are closest to Ukraine, although Poland and Ukraine got a mixed history, so I'm not entirely sure how much they would be appreciated. But European nations need to step the fuck up. They need to do something more than just sanctions. These are their neighbors you're looking at. And you know damn well that when Russia's done stepping over one, that just gives precedence to step over another. More importantly, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Russia produce quite a large agricultural products, whether it be in sunflowers or in wheat. And that is a necessary grain crop, especially wheat, to the world food market. This affects not only African nations like Egypt, who is the largest wheat importer on the planet, but this affects the European Union as well. And that also goes for the minerals and oils, mineral oil and everything else that Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Belarus, and the rest of the previously liberated or democratized communist states or puppet vassals now to Russia that currently exist. They all contribute to this. Same with fertilizer, same with all this other stuff. Last time I checked, people don't really care about what their politicians are saying if they're too hungry to listen. This is how changes happen. And most of the time, not in a very pleasant way. I mean, you thought the trucker protests were bad, and all they were doing was arguing over mandates. In fact, the people are still talking about it today. Clearly shows that it made an impact, although in my opinion, people are talking about it completely the wrong way, especially Americans. If you're gonna comment on something that happened in another country, at least understand the pretense of it, and maybe that makes me sound like a hypocrite, but at the end of the day, there was a lot more going on than what a lot of people were reporting. And it's the same with Ukraine. There's a lot more going on than what people were reporting before the Civil War and now during this invasion. And if I had all the facts, I could give a prominent idea. And I know people have been telling me, well, what's your idea? And me, I'm just an armchair enthusiast at best. I mean, I do have a history with the military, but at the end of the day, on the ground viewpoint of a combat engineer is not the same as a full-blown political analyst. What I can say is that anyone who is smart enough, that knows what they're doing, who has a specialized skill or trade, that isn't directly needed for defense purposes, whether it be setting booby traps or things like that, should be getting out of Ukraine. Or, if you don't want to leave, because I know you might not want to, they should at least be specializing in things they can actually do. Welders can weld caps off pipe bombs, for instance. And there's a whole manner of things that can be done to sabotage the Russian army, to continue grinding it down in the heroic fashion they've been doing. But let's face it, the metric of war always wins, especially in this case, because this isn't a typical asymmetrical warfare situation. This isn't what happened in Afghanistan. This isn't what happened in a lot of other places where other powers like the United States and Canada got stuck their nose in and got smacked. This is a full-blown, traditionally styled supremacy of firepower type of war. There are going to be civilian casualties. Cities are going to be destroyed. This is just the inevitability of it. And more people are going to die daily. The only way to stop this is to stop the source of the aggression. And if it can't be done politically, and it looks like it can't be, though I could be wrong, maybe they'll find something in the ninth hour, it'll have to be done militaristically. The United States ain't coming to your rescue this time. And Canada can only do so much. We are not capable of waging any kind of war against Russia. Well, you're going to have to look to your neighbors. And you got some big ones. Great Britain isn't exactly powerless here. Just because Boris Johnson got flounced in his own parliamentary procedure doesn't mean they can't assist, in more ways than one. Their fleet assets, for one, can be very, very useful, even if it's to blockade things to stop the Russian Navy from invading other cities. The French have a pretty decent air force and military force. French Foreign Legionnaires, nothing to sniff at, and they do have mercenaries for hire. There's already reports, and I have no idea if they're confirmed or not, of other nations giving Ukraine all kinds of things, from the Poles trying to do the fighter jet agreement, which in my opinion they shouldn't need to ask the United States for. They should just drop them off and away you go. All the way to Germany increasing its military spending. Poland has gathered up its forces, as well as everybody else in that area, because they're not stupid. They know what's on the line when Ukraine falls. And it's a when, not an if. The Ukrainian army is probably exhausted at this point. The reserves, if they have any, are being used to plug the holes wherever possible, and the militia can only do so much before even they start losing combat effectiveness. And at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. Russia, despite its incompetency, and it has many in this case, can wait out the defenders. They shouldn't, but they can. That's something a lot of people don't seem to understand. Now, Putin is in a race against time. But, considering recent events, that's my 2 cents worth. Inevitably, if direct intervention cannot be done, and economic destruction can't be accomplished, then there really is nothing to stop them. and you're looking at what happened in 1936 all over again. This is Floyd, signing out.